I remember the moment clearly, like it was frozen in time. It wasn't something dramatic, not something anyone else might even notice. But for me, it meant everything. I had been carrying so much inside, trying to be present, trying to give my full attention to something or someone that mattered to me, even when it seemed like no one else saw it. I realized one day that giving everything I had wasn't about showing off or proving anything. It was about quiet, patient effort, the kind that slowly builds inside and changes how you feel, how you understand people, how you see life. And I didn't even realize how much I was pouring into it until it reached a point where I couldn't hold it back anymore. That's when it hit me. I was giving everything I had. And this would shock anyone who truly understood what it meant to give completely without expecting anything in return. It started with small things. I would sit and listen for hours, not just hearing, but really listening, letting the words sink in and letting the silences speak too. Most people hear and reply, but I was learning to hear and hold, to let each moment breathe. I gave my patience freely, even when it was hard. Sometimes people or situations tested it, pushed it to the edge, and yet I kept offering it because I realized that patience was not just waiting. It was understanding, it was holding space for someone or something to grow, to be revealed, to be heard in its own time. I gave my effort without thinking of the cost, because I believe that some things in life are meant to be nurtured quietly, without applause, without recognition. And every day, I felt myself stretching in ways I didn't know I could. I gave everything I had, without even noticing, and only later did I understand the weight and the beauty of it. There was a moment when I noticed the change. I had been helping someone through something they didn't even realize they were struggling with. I wasn't trying to fix them or to guide them. I was simply there, offering my care in the smallest ways. A text to check in, a gentle word, a presence that said, "I see you, I hear you. You are not alone." It might seem ordinary, but the way that person started to open up, the way they slowly let me in, it was shocking in the quietest sense. It wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic, but it shook me in a way I didn't expect. I had given everything I had, and the realization hit me that giving isn't about quantity, it's about the depth of presence, the depth of care. And the impact of that depth, even if silent, is more powerful than I ever imagined. At times, giving everything I had felt exhausting. I remember nights when I would lie awake, thinking maybe I had given too much. Maybe I had offered too much patience, too much attention, too much care, and had nothing left for myself. But those were moments of doubt, of self-questioning, and in hindsight I understand they were necessary. Because giving fully means confronting your limits, facing the parts of yourself you try to hide, and realizing that even when you feel empty, the act of giving itself creates its own fullness. The surprise, the shock I hadn't anticipated, was discovering that I could keep giving, not because I had endless reserves, but because every act of care, every moment of presence, refilled me in ways I never thought possible. I also discovered that giving everything is not always visible to others. Some people might never notice the hours, the thoughts, the quiet attention. Some may even take it for granted. And yet, giving fully doesn't depend on recognition. It depends on sincerity, on honesty, on the willingness to be present in a way that matters even if no one else sees it. I was shocked at first by how much of this giving went unnoticed. But then I realized that its true value is internal, not external. It shapes you, it teaches you, it changes how you view the world and your place in it. There is a hidden power in giving fully, a quiet shock that no one else can feel unless they step into that space themselves. One of the most intense moments came when I saw the results of this giving. Not because anyone said thank you, but because the situation, the person, or even just the memory itself changed. Something that was fragile, or heavy, or tense, became lighter, more open, more alive. And it shocked me, because I had not been expecting such a transformation. I had given everything without thinking of outcomes, and yet the outcome appeared, almost as if it had been waiting for me to be fully present. That's the strange, beautiful part about giving. Sometimes the effect is immediate, and sometimes it takes years to reveal itself, but when it does, it feels like a secret reward, a silent shock that reminds you why you gave in the first place. There were also moments of emotional rawness. Moments when I realized that giving everything meant exposing yourself to hurt. If you give your time, your care, your attention, and it is not received or it is misunderstood, it can feel like loss. But even in those moments, there is a strange kind of beauty, a kind of shock in recognizing the vulnerability it takes to give fully. I had been careful in life, measured my words and actions, tried not to overextend, and yet, when I chose to give everything, there was no safety net. I had to face the fear that comes with giving your heart in the smallest ways, and that fear, once confronted, became one of the most powerful lessons that giving fully is an act of courage, and courage itself is shocking in its simplicity. I remember one night in particular, sitting alone with my thoughts, replaying all the moments I had given myself completely. I reflected on how much effort, how much attention, how much patience I had invested without expectation, and it overwhelmed me. I realized that giving everything is not about counting acts, but about embracing intention, consistency, and presence. I had been shocked at first by how much I had done, by how deeply I had cared. But then another shock came. The realization that giving fully is not about draining yourself. It is about opening yourself, allowing yourself to be present, and in doing so becoming more alive than ever before. Giving everything also reshaped how I understood connection. I learned that connection isn't always dramatic or filled with words. Sometimes it's quiet, subtle, almost invisible to others. I gave my attention in ways that no one else would notice, listening when someone barely spoke, staying patient when situations were tense, caring when there was no acknowledgement. And what shocked me most was the reciprocity that came, not always from the same person, not always immediately, but in the way life responds to genuine effort. Giving fully sets a ripple in motion. Even if you don't see it, it grows, touches others, and sometimes returns to you in forms you couldn't anticipate. That was a lesson I never expected. A shock that changed my understanding of care entirely. I also realized that giving everything is not just about people. It can be about moments, memories, or situations. I poured my attention into understanding past mistakes, learning from old memories, caring for my own growth. That too demanded everything I had: effort, patience, honesty, and reflection. And what shocked me was that the same process of giving to myself, giving my time to heal and understand, created a depth of clarity I had never known. It's funny how giving fully outwardly and inwardly mirrors each other. The more you give to life, to people, to moments, the more it gives back to you in understanding, in insight, in quiet joy. And here is where the final shock came for me. I had always believed that giving everything meant some form of exhaustion, depletion, or risk. But the truth is the opposite. When you give fully, your world opens, your heart expands, your perception shifts. You realize that the act of giving isn't a loss, it is a gain beyond measure. The shock isn't in what others see or feel, it's in what you discover about yourself, your strength, your patience, your ability to care without condition. I never expected that the act of giving would return to me in ways more profound than I could explain. I never expected that I could be empty in some ways, and yet fuller than ever in others. And that realization, quiet as it is, has changed me forever. Looking back, I understand that giving everything is not a momentary choice. It is a lifelong decision. It doesn't have a scoreboard, it doesn't guarantee recognition, and it isn't about outcomes. It is about showing up fully, being present fully, and caring fully. The shock isn't loud, it is the kind that settles deep inside, the kind that reshapes who you are, what you value, and how you approach life. I have given my attention, my effort, my patience, and my care in ways I never imagined, and the shock is that it doesn't diminish me, it elevates me. I am still learning, still discovering, still giving, and yet every act reminds me that this is the most human, most powerful thing I can do. And maybe, just maybe, that's the part that shocks people most when they see it. Not the grand gestures, not the obvious sacrifices, but the quiet, steady, unwavering presence that comes from giving your everything. Because giving fully is not about others, it is about the depth of living fully, of caring deeply, of embracing every moment with intention and love. And the truth is, when you give everything, you don't just change the world around you. You change yourself in ways that are quietly, beautifully shocking. Even after realizing the quiet power of giving everything, I found myself returning to those moments again and again in my mind. Sometimes it's not a conscious decision, it's just that life presents situations where you feel compelled to give more than you thought possible. I started noticing the subtle ways this giving shapes everything around you, how it changes your perceptions, your expectations, even the way you breathe. There were days when it felt heavy, when the effort I was putting in seemed invisible, and yet something